Welcome back to another episode of History of Gaming Metal Gear. This will be the last game intro in the series, and this will be probably the longest historic lesson or history lesson that we do, as today we will be discussing not only the development of Metal Gear Solid 5 and what was going on with Kojima and his career around that time, but we'll also be discussing all of the events that lead to the massive meltdown of Konami's during this time, which is in 2015. We'll also be talking about PT, Playable Teaser, which was a large portion of that. So, without further ado, let us begin discussing all of these events. Now, unlike previous games in this series, I will not be splitting this into the two parts of Kojima's career and the game's development, as the following series of events are far too interwoven with one another to be able to talk about them separately. So talking about one thing encompasses other conversations about other elements between the two subjects. So we'll be talking about the timeline of events that take place shortly before the release of Metal Gear Rising, up to what takes place just after Metal Gear Solid 5's launch. Also, I'll be bouncing around between subjects to explain this correctly in the timeline, so please bear with me. So, for us to be able to begin, let us rewind a little bit to 2010. We can start discussing the events that led to the Konami meltdown. In 2010, Konami begins to see some serious loss in income from their entertainment division in particular, or rather their console gaming division. This is suddenly resolved 2 years later in 2012, though, when we see a huge spike in income. Now, this was due to the release of a Konami mobile game, so we're talking cell phones and things like that. The company then comes to the conclusion that mobile gaming and its digital content, so non-physical products like microtransactions, are going to be able to help the company recoup their losses. Now, at this time, development on Metal Gear Solid 5 was already approved and in its infant stages. So this new ideology takes place after the green light was given to Metal Gear Solid 5, and therefore the budget required to make the game was already approved. With that being said, let's continue our conversation on what Kojima was working on at the time. Last we discussed it, there was a lot of talk about this Fox engine. As I mentioned before, we see Kojima tweet out a picture of the DVD case to Silent Hill, the movie, and him making mention of wanting to see what he could do with the Fox engine. Shortly after this, there was an interview with him and the well-known video game journalist Jeff Keighley, where he was asked, which game would you like to direct or reboot, to which Kojima responded without hesitation, Silent Hill. We hear nothing more on this Silent Hill conversation for quite some time, but we will later. Although we do see more tweets about the Fox engine from Hideo Kojima and him flexing the muscles of what it was capable of. Here we have a couple pictures that come from those tweets, and what we see here is Kojima challenging us to discern which of the two sets of pictures are in-engine and which are real photographs of one of the conference rooms at Konami. And that's the section on the left, between A or B, which one's real, which one's fake. Later, we do see this picture of a white horse standing in the middle of the same conference room. Now, you know, it's just a horse in a conference room for most people, but fans of Metal Gear knows this clearly provokes some memories of the boss's horse from Metal Gear Solid 3 and Peace Walker. But what we didn't know was this was foreshadowing to the content that would be in Metal Gear Solid 5. These tweets surfaced sometime in 2012. Therefore, before the launch of Metal Gear Rising, so most people seem to not realize that this is prep for the next Metal Gear, because they may have assumed that it had something to do with Metal Gear Rising. Then, 2012 begins to come to a close, and on December 7th, the Spike Video Game Awards are aired. Many people turn into the show to see what games get what awards and what new trailers we can set our eyes on, and this would end up being a very emotional show for myself because the winner of Game of the Year that year was Telltale's The Walking Dead, and it's complete bullshit. I mean, come on. It's not even the full series. It was season 1 of the fucking game, and I get it. People love these dumb games, but Game of the Year games should specifically be something that not just pushes the envelope in storytelling, but also graphics, gameplay, other design elements, which this crap just doesn't, all right? It's a choose-your-own adventure book. All right, get out of here with that nonsense. And before you say, well, I think it's a pretty decent game, let me remind you, this was up against Assassin's Creed 3, Dishonored, Journey, and Mass Effect fucking 3 that year, while Halo 4, Borderlands 2, XCOM Enemy Unknown, Xenoblade Chronicles, and Diablo 3 all went unnominated. And furthermore, what? History of what? What do you mean, rant? Oh. So while I was perturbed at this decision, I did see something intriguing. A trailer does mysteriously pop up from Moby Dick Studios, a Swedish video game producer that we've never heard of before. A quick Google search shows that the studio started in 2010, so just 2 years old at this point when this video came out, and it was owned by a Joakim Mogren. At that 2012 Video Game Awards, we see the following trailer.
Please try to relax. There is plenty of time. I need to tell you something. You've been in a coma for quite some time.
On your feet, soldier. The whole place is coming down.
V has come to.
So, there you have it. This very interesting trailer. Upon seeing this, I immediately looked to my now wife and roommate at the time and said, that's Metal Gear. To which both of them denied me and said, no, there's no way that that is Metal Gear. You know, it was being made by a company called Moby Dick, not Kojima. Konami didn't have their name anywhere on it. It's called Phantom Pain, not Metal Gear. It just doesn't add up. How can we consider this game called Phantom Pain to be Metal Gear? Well, I was adamant, but I knew that just deep down inside, the angles that were used, the camera angles used, the level of mystery, this Moby Dick Studios coming up out of nowhere, all of this just felt very Kojima. Well, it didn't take the internet too long to confirm my suspicions. Because if you take a look at the title of The Phantom Pain and pay attention to where the little lines that are cut into the title are, and fill it in, you get the words Metal Gear Solid V. She also mentions V has woke up. So, it sounds like the 5th title had come and was awoken. If that wasn't proof enough, this ride gets crazier. Okay, on March 12th of 2013, Jeff Keighley, Hideo Kojima, and this Joachim Mogren from Moby Dick Studios all state via Twitter that they're on their way to GDC, or Game Developer Conference 2013. 2 days later, on the 14th of March, an interview between Jeff Keighley and Joachim Mogren appears. Now, this is loaded up to one of the websites that Jeff Keighley was writing for at the time, and we can see that interview here.
All right, I'm here with Moby Dick Studios head CEO, Joachim Mogren.
Hello, Jeff.
Joachim, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's very good to see you.
First of all, I should ask, what happened to your face? Are you okay?
Yes, I had a little accident, but I should be good by GDC coming up.
You know, a lot of people have been wondering who you really are, what Moby Dick Studios is working on. When are you going to tell us more about the Phantom Pain? Are you going to be able to share more tonight?
Yes, I plan on attending this show coming up in San Francisco, but I don't have anything to show today, unfortunately.
Okay, let me ask you a few things, though, about Phantom Pain, because as you know, when we announced this at the VGAs, there was a lot of speculation about what this game actually is. Is it a next-generation game? That's something a lot of people ask me on Twitter, saying, Keighley, is this a current-gen game? Is it next-gen? Is this a PlayStation 4 game?
Unfortunately, I cannot confirm that.
Okay. Can you maybe confirm that you guys have development kits, at least, for next-generation systems?
I'm so sorry, Jeff. I can unfortunately not confirm that either.
All right, well, this is going well. What can you tell us then at GDC? What are you going to show from the game?
This year's GDC show, I will have a new Phantom Pain trailer, and I can confirm that it will answer all of your questions.
Okay, answer all the questions. So
Yeah.
We're not getting a lot of answers tonight, but at the Game Developers Conference later this month, there'll be no more secrets about this game.
Yes.
I guess one thing I will say here is that, we're sitting here in a hotel room. We were asked to come interview you, find out something about the game. How do I not know this is some elaborate ruse?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot show too much, but for you, Jeff, I can show you some new images and some new stuff here on my iPad that hopefully you'll enjoy.
Okay, so you're going to prove that this is real. So what are we seeing here? This is some concept art from the game?
Yeah.
Some concept art. There's the whale, it looks like. Oh, wow, those look like some new screens. Oh, the main character. So these are screenshots. I noticed there's a Fox Engine logo in the corner, so this game is running on the Fox Engine.
And there you have it. A little bit more information leaked to us, quote unquote leaked here. And that makes it pretty obvious, doesn't it? Well, for the 3 people in the world who hadn't figured it out at this point, it's revealed during the same GDC that they were talking about that Moby Dick Studio and its owner, Mr. Mogren, were fictional creations of Kojima Productions, and they were used to generate viral interest for Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. And as I'm sure you've already deduced by this time, that Joachim is actually an anagram for Kojima. But what was more interesting is the last name of this fictional character, Mogren. It has the word ogre contained within it. Now, before this was announced, there was a lot of online conjuncturing and rumors about what the next game was, and people were saying that Kojima was working on something called Project Ogre. Now, whether or not Kojima named the development of MGS5 Project Ogre is not known, but he clearly knew of the rumors at least, and used it to toy with us. So we get that interesting little clip followed up quickly by the actual announcement of Metal Gear Solid 5. Initially, this game was announced to be one title, and that would be the video game Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. And that changes later, and we'll get into that. But it's official. Metal Gear Solid 5's happening, the world knows about this development, and that said development was pretty hefty. It was said to take over $80 million to create this video game. And to put that in perspective, Metal Gear Solid 5 is tied for the 5th most expensive game ever, with Star Wars The Old Republic being the most expensive game at $200 million, which I have to assume that's due to heavy licensing fees with the Star Wars name being attached. More importantly, Konami has no other titles listed on this most expensive game list, so this is easily Konami's most expensive undertaking for a video game. There was speculation that Metal Gear Solid 4 cost around $50 million, but a lot of people came out and stated that it cost a lot less. That's still a good $30 million shorter of what Metal Gear Solid 5 did take to make. I would say to venture that Metal Gear Solid 4 is probably the next most expensive game that Konami developed as well. So with the financial issues that we talked about earlier in 2010 for Konami, I can't help but wonder, was the already approved hefty development cost of Metal Gear Solid 5 a sore spot for investors or executive staff? We'll never know. Nobody's ever made a comment on it. But we do move on to March of 2014. In March of 2014, we have a short but incredibly important side note. Koji Igarashi, I believe is how you pronounce it, the most notable name in the Castlevania series, leaves Konami. So here is the point in the timeline where the Konami internal issues are starting to surface. This man has been with Konami for a very long time. He worked on the previous Castlevanias, but the first one that he headed up and really did the most work with was Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is a massive favorite. People adore this game. And he leaves. He uproots and gets out of there. And that, starts to raise a suspicion. What's going on? Meanwhile, back at Kojima Productions, Metal Gear Solid 5 development continues. And we fans finally get two pieces of development news sometime in 2014. Both, though, are unsettling. The first being David Hayter, the long-standing voice actor for Snake, will be replaced by Kiefer Sutherland. On one hand, it's amazing that such a big name in Hollywood is making an appearance as a voice actor in the game, but at the same time, we've been listening to David Hayter play Snake since 1998 with Metal Gear Solid 1, which was the first voice-acted game. So as long as Snake's had a voice, at least here in America, it's been David Hayter doing the voice. It's not until after the release of Metal Gear Solid 5 that an interview with Hayter reveals that Kojima had actually been trying to branch out Snake's voice actor role to other actors since Metal Gear Solid 2. And the reason for it was never really truly revealed. But they weren't able to do so because they were having a hard time finding people to match the voice. And it makes sense. David Hayter's rendition of Snake is very unique and very interesting. Hard to replicate. But Kojima was always really good about communicating this with Hayter. It was never something that crept up on Hayter. Hayter knew he always had to reapply and always had a re-audition for the role of Snake, and he just kept getting it because they couldn't find anybody that did it as well as he did. It appears that David was a bit blindsided, though, with it this time around. He mentioned this in some interviews that you can easily find online. The second piece of news that I mentioned was that Metal Gear Solid 5 was going to be split into two parts. A small release called Ground Zeroes, and then the remaining and majority of the game would be launched under the title of The Phantom Pain. Now this kind of makes sense and it doesn't. If we look at Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear 3, or Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, you can see that Kojima enjoys starting his game off with prologues. In Metal Gear Solid 2, we have the tanker mission, which takes about 15 minutes, and then the rest of the game is hours on the big shell. Metal Gear Solid 3, we have the Virtuous mission for about 30 minutes, and then the rest of the game is Snake Eater. So, Ground Zeroes definitely feels like it was developed as the prologued portion of Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. But why release it separately and with a $30 price tag, no less? Well, we have to look back at what I mentioned earlier about Konami in 2010. The majority of revenue for Konami comes from its console game development. But they have two other divisions that people don't know about. The mobile gaming division, as well as a machine gaming division. So like slot machines and stuff like that. Now, the entertainment division, or the console gaming departments, were not making the money that they used to. Who knows why? We hadn't seen a good Silent Hill in years. Castlevania Lord of Shadows was decent, but it didn't sell as well as it could have. Metal Gear was taking a lot of money up front to be able to develop. These are all strictly just things I've observed about Konami. It doesn't mean they are the cause, but regardless, in 2012, the mobile gaming division starts carrying the company. Barely carrying them. And the entertainment division is a hemorrhage on company funds, with Metal Gear Solid 5 costing the $80 million I mentioned before. Well, it's pretty clear that Konami then steps in and forces Kojima's hand. Ground Zeroes was done, and they said, print it and ship it, we need the money. And so, at least from a distance, it appears Kojima was forced to piecemeal out Metal Gear Solid 5 to get some sustaining funds for Konami. This isn't an unheard of tactic with developers, though. This is why they push pre-orders so heavily with pre-order bonuses. We see early access games where you pay for an unfinished game up front, and we see season passes. Basically, companies need money now so they can keep making money later. But rarely we ever see it this bad, seen on this level. This, of course, pissed off fans. And I'm sure that didn't set well with Kojima, as he took the brunt of all that anger from the fans, thinking that it was Kojima's decision alone. Kojima's never come out, nor has Konami, on whose decision it was to make Ground Zero separate from Metal Gear Solid 5, so this is all conjecture. Now, let's be real, though. As awesome as Kojima is, he is human. You have to be realistic about things. And I think that this little forced hand move from Konami explains at least partly the issues with David Hayter. Why Kojima didn't communicate as well as he could have in the past. He was probably having some shit days at work, and sometimes he just didn't handle things super well as a result of it. Just my thoughts. No way to prove what I'm thinking here, but I don't think reality is too far of a leap from what I'm thinking here. So for us to move forward, we have to talk about August 12th of 2014. We have a mysterious download that appears on the PlayStation Network, and it's titled PT. PT was released by 7780 Studios and was an immediate sensation with nearly 1 million downloads within a month. It's not long before it's revealed, that 7780 Studio is actually a pseudonym for Kojima Productions, and that Kojima was responsible for PT. Kojima then reveals that PT stands for Playable Teaser, that it runs on the Fox engine. Short time after that, the game Silent Hills is announced, and it will be developed by Kojima, published by Konami, with the directing assistance of Guillermo del Toro, a famous and incredible Mexican film director, and with the actor Norman Reedus from AMC's The Walking Dead. He'll be playing the role of the main character, and this is an incredible piece of news for Silent Hill fans. The future was limitless. Then things are quiet for a while, until March 4th of 2015. This is where things really start to hit the fan. On March 4th of 2015, suddenly a new corporate structure is deployed at Konami, placing one Hideki Hayakawa as the president of Konami. And then Kojima, who, if you recall, was named executive vice president and corporate officer in 2011, disappears from the corporate executive structure. It's worth noting that Hayakawa was the developer of the mobile game that generated the income spike for Konami back in 2012. So now, the mobile gaming is getting to be a bigger deal for Konami, and they even take the person who understands mobile gaming the best and makes them the president of the company. It's not long after this, though, that we see Kojima is seen in another interview stating that, once again, Metal Gear Solid 5 would be the last Metal Gear. Okay, we've heard this a million times before, right? Wrong. Something was different. Hideo Kojima said it with a little bit more remorse this time, and people felt that. We've heard him say this is the last Metal Gear infinite number of times, but you could just tell something was different. And then to seal the deal, on March 16th, right, so we're talking less than half a month after this whole restructuring of people happens, Kojima tweets this. It's a screenshot from Metal Gear Solid 5 of Big Boss climbing onto a helicopter, and he says, heading off. Kind of heavy stuff there. He never really got on to what exactly that meant. But Kojima is either trying to play with us more, or he's trying to tell us things are going to change, and I'm not going to stick around for too long. Sadly, though, Konami seemed to not take too kindly to this tweet, because on March 19th, a new Twitter account is made for Metal Gear. Kojima-related watermarks are removed from all MGS5 content. Key console developers start leaving Konami from all over the company, not just Kojima's team. And then Kojima Productions, the studio that Kojima developed in Los Angeles, gets renamed to Konami LA Studios. And if that ain't bad enough, then, allegedly, due to power struggles within the company, and I'm assuming here that this is Kojima loyalists versus Konami executives, is where this power struggle lies, Konami restructures contracts with the entire Metal Gear and Kojima production teams, making all employees strictly contractors. Additionally, all affected employees will have their internet, email, and phone access heavily limited. Also, all promotion opportunities were eliminated for these individuals. Holy shit, Konami. What the hell's going on over there? All of a sudden, these people are all on contractor positions, which means they can be terminated at a moment's notice. There's no promised continued employment. It's crazy. It doesn't sound like employees are getting treated real awesome over there for having opinions on how things should be ran. April 25th, PT is removed from the PlayStation Network. It's not up for too long. And then it's no longer able to be re-downloaded, even if you previously owned it, like most titles from the PSN. This means that Konami had deleted PT from the PlayStation servers. Quickly, PS4s with PT still installed start going for thousands online because of the sensation behind the potential Silent Hills game. 2 days later, on the 27th, Konami cancels Silent Hills development. This pisses off Guillermo del Toro royally, and if you know the guy, he speaks his mind unfiltered style. You can only imagine the stuff he had to say when he spent so much time on the development of this game just for Konami to can it. Now, all of that is pretty frustrating, and you're probably a little hot under the collar hearing all this, but brace yourself, sit down, breathe a little bit, because it gets worse. March 29th, 2015, Hideki Hayakawa, the new president that I mentioned before, states that Konami's future will be mobile-first focused. Additionally, there will now be a clear distinction between management and creative roles. Quote, clear distinctions between management and creative roles. Okay, to simplify what that means, that means all creative individuals, so that means developers, artists, directors, so forth, will no longer be able to hold any management positions. This means that there's going to be a line in the sand between suits and artist and zero crossover. Previously, creative minds, like Kojima, were able to manage teams. This is no longer the case, as the company feels you need a business person making decisions and the rest of the people just to produce the product. The creative ones will now produce content and obey and not be allowed to aspire to leadership roles. But keep breathing, there's more. After that, on August 8th, 2015, an article leaks detailing information from workers with the company, and Konami never denies the information that's in this article. The workplace becomes intensely strict, with the following changes being only a few examples listed in the article. Lunch breaks are now monitored, and those late will have their names announced through the building in a form of public shaming. And we're talking Japan here, people. This is a seriously fucked up thing to do to people. Also, cameras are installed to monitor employees. Everywhere in the building, the cameras are allegedly installed. Anywhere you go, they can watch you. And then, developers that are found to be, quote, redundant or, quote, in need of punishment are transferred to menial labor jobs. For example, security guards, cleaning staff, or assembly line workers for the slot machine factories. And this was not limited to junior staff. Senior staff could have this happen to them. So you go to school, you become educated to be able to be a developer or an artist or a designer, and you're wanting to make these video games. And if they believe there's too many of you in a particular department, or you're in the need of punishment, you can have that developing job that you've been working on for so long taken away from you, and then you're just made into a janitor without you being able to talk about it with anybody. It just happens. So, once this caught wind, Konami was dead to gamers. It is after this article launched August 8th of 2015, we start to see the hashtag Fuck Konami start up, and it trends the same day the article is released, and it's still being used today, especially with Metal Gear Survive coming out. So, hashtag Fuck Konami takes off, and we get a huge viral support of pushing against Konami. They're telling us that video games aren't important anymore, mobile games are. They start treating their employees less than awesome. It's starting to get out of hand. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about something that I learned when I was writing this information down. This is all very heavy, oppressive actions being taken here against enemies. And during all this research, I found an incredible, we'll call it a coincidence, but I bet Kojima intended for this to happen. Now, this reference is a little bit of a stretch, and you kind of need to know a little bit about some historical readings, and I'll do my best to try and do it justice. But once I reviewed one of the videos for what happened with Konami, the video creator referred to it as Orwellian. So what this means is it's a reference to George Orwell's novel 1984. For those of you that are not familiar with this book, 1984 is a warning of what could come with a superstate, omnipresent government that oppresses its people and constantly observes them. Now, this is an apt reference for the events that are taking place at Konami, and the guy who made that original video that I watched nailed it on the head. But what is creepy is this reference is to 1984 is in Metal Gear Solid 5. And I'll do my best when we're playing the game to show these references, but there's a character who will say 2 plus 2 equals 5, 2 plus 2 equals 5. This is an element within the novel talking about torturing and brainwashing people and reprogramming them to do differently than what they originally thought. We also see this phrase here, Big Brother is watching. That originates in the novel, but you'll find posters in Metal Gear Solid 5 that say, Big Boss is watching you. Of course, a toss back to the Big Brother is watching you posters. And then if that all was not enough for you, and you're like, yeah, that's kind of a stretch, Zig, try this on for size. The game takes place, you guessed it, in the year 1984. It's my opinion that Hideo Kojima or his team placed these elements in the game as a testament to the state of things in Konami at the time. And while we're on the subject, there's also some really awesome Lord of the Flies references in there too, so watch out for pig heads stuck on sticks and conch shells on the hips of child warriors. Really great stuff. So, pretty heavy content there, talking about what Konami got themselves into. We'll put it behind us. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of what Konami was doing that caused so much hate for them. But we'll creep forwards towards the release of Metal Gear Solid 5 at this point. The release date is set for September 1st, 2015, and advanced copies are starting to go out. Well, guess what? Konami pisses people off again. We find out that the physical PC copies of the game that reach consumers in advance releasement, so for reviews and things like that, the people are pissed. Because you take out the disc, and you got your copy of Metal Gear Solid 5 on PC, right? You pop it into the PC, and what it does is it installs an 8 megabyte file. And that 8 megabyte file is Steam. It just installs Steam, and launches Steam, and redeems the game on Steam, and then you're left to download the 28 gigabyte game when you physically bought the game. That really pissed people off. That was the cherry on top. Alright, so let's take a moment to break down all this drama with Konami. And we'll take a break from it, and we'll talk about the game now. So, we want to talk about themes, because Metal Gear Solid has always been about themes, and we'll go over it one last time here. Metal Gear Solid 1 was about genes, right? It was all about gene manipulation for soldiers, the fact that Solid and Liquid Snake were clones, and then Metal Gear Solid 2 is about memes. And I'm not talking about SpongeBob, I'm talking about what memes actually mean as a definition, and that is the cultural understandings of a people. And Metal Gear Solid 2 gets heavy on that, and how memes can dictate how people operate and work. Metal Gear Solid 3 is got the theme of scenes, so taking a look at the current event in the current political state of events, and that was all about the Cold War. And we take a look at the scene of East meets West. And then we have Metal Gear Solid 4, Sense, heavily talking about the Guns of the Patriot, Sons of the Patriot system, where you're able to sense things through the nano machine connections. Of course, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker's theme was peace. And now we have Metal Gear Solid 5. It's actually got two elements, and the theme is race and revenge. As the story will touch on the misunderstanding, prejudice, hatred, and conflict caused by the difference of language, race, custom, culture, and preference. Also, the revenge portion of this theme is not the revenge of two characters in particular, it's the revenge between these kind of race wars. So this game's going to get real heavy into some of the most fucked up wars in human history. Not necessarily in a very direct reference, but as a overall umbrellaed approach to how these wars are represented and what the reality of them kind of look like. As far as gameplay, we see Metal Gear Solid 5 move to an open world setting, and a massive one at that. Not all in one piece, though. It's a series of large maps in different places around the world, but the overall size of this game is massive. We can now jump in and out of vehicles, which is awesome. The crawling mechanics get a massive overhaul, and it feels really good. And we also see this new feature called Reflex Mode, which is an optional setting where the game will slow down time and swing the camera around to focus on an enemy when Snake is spotted. It's pretty cool. Giving the player this cinematic, stylized opportunity to take down the enemy before it actually sets off a full-blown alert. There's also a companion system we've never seen before that gets a lot of use in 5, but isn't present in Ground Zeroes. Ground Zeroes is released on March 18th, 2014, and scores a Metacritic score of 75%. Now, 75% is pretty high, despite the fact that it was released for $30 and didn't have a lot of content to it. It was a glorified tech demo. That's not a bad Metacritic score. Then Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, the full game, is released on September 1st, 2015, with a score of 93% on Metacritic. As always, we talk about what video games came out at the same time the game that we're playing did, and I have to say 2015 was an amazing year for games, guys. We had Rise of the Tomb Raider, Halo 5, Star Wars Battlefront 1, Batman Arkham Knight, Bloodborne, Fallout 4, and The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Of course, The Witcher is an amazing game. Fallout, Bloodborne, amazing games. Fantastic games. The game also boasts amazing gameplay design, but a weak on story. Now, there is a story in Metal Gear Solid 5, but you can just tell that there was supposed to be more. And from what we explained earlier, you can see why things are probably missing. It was probably hard to stay creative and optimistic while working on that game. Now back to Konami for the last stretch here. After a month of Metal Gear Solid 5 being released, on October 9th, images of a farewell party for Kojima are seen tweeted out. The next day, on October 10th, Konami denies that Kojima has left the company. They state, he's just on vacation. Denial much? Get out of here. We then see 2015, the Game Awards on December 3rd. There's an award presentation. This is where the Konami fiasco reaches its absolute climax. And I'll let you guys go ahead and see Metal Gear Solid 5 winning an award at the Game Awards. I don't remember what award they won. I don't think it was Game of the Year. I think it was for voice acting. But let's go ahead and see how things were handled.
Metal Gear Solid. Kiefer Sutherland. Oh yeah.
Accepting for Metal Gear Solid 5 on behalf of Hideo Kojima is the voice of Snake, Kiefer Sutherland.
On behalf of Hideo Kojima and everybody who worked on the game, I will accept this award and thank you from the bottom of our hearts. On a personal note, I just wanted to say that I think you guys are the most devoted fans I have ever seen. It doesn't matter whether it seems to be premiere of 24 or an opening of a film, the only thing I seem to ever sign are posters of Snake from Metal Gear Solid. You guys rock. Have a great night. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Kiefer, for accepting that award. And as you noticed, Hideo Kojima is not here with us tonight, and I want to tell you a little bit about that. Mr. Kojima had every intention of being with us tonight, but unfortunately, he was informed by a lawyer representing Konami just recently that he would not be allowed to travel to tonight's awards ceremony to accept any awards. He's still under an employment contract, and it's disappointing, and it's inconceivable to me that an artist like Hideo would not be allowed to come here and celebrate with his peers and his fellow teammates such an incredible game as Metal Gear Solid 5. But that's the situation we're in. Hideo is in Tokyo right now watching the show, so we want you to know, Hideo, that we're thinking of you. And we miss you. We hope to see you at the Game Awards 2016. But because we are thinking of you, some of your friends and I put together a little surprise for you. And here it is. Here to perform Quiet's theme from the Metal Gear Solid 5 soundtrack, please welcome Stephanie Justin.
So we'll let that song play in the background as we continue this conversation, but there you have it. Konami bans Hideo Kojima from going in and accepting an award for the game that he worked on. Awesome move on Jeff Keighley's part there as well. He makes sure that Konami has it aired exactly what they've done, and it doesn't go unnoticed. Very awesome move by him. It's not long before December 15th comes that Konami finally announces that Kojima is officially no longer working for for Konami. The following day, on the 16th of December 2015, Sony announces that Kojima is working for them, and Sony comes off a bit proud and aggressive with this announcement and this new partnership. It felt good. Same day, Kojima Productions is reopened with new logos, and in the end, we get this kind of happy ending for good old Hideo Kojima. He's going to start working on Death Stranding with Sony, and at the time that this stream is airing, Death Stranding's in production. He's working with Guillermo del Toro once again, and Norman Reedus, which is fantastic. And sure, we have Metal Gear Survive existing out there, and the Metal Gear series is essentially dead because of this, but it's just Konami using the title Metal Gear to try and make more money, and the fiasco continues. That is kind of par for the course for these guys now. With that being said, that brings us to the end of the history lesson for Metal Gear Solid 5 and the events that took place leading up to it. We will now get into the gameplay for Metal Gear 5 Ground Zeroes, which is this tech demo that I mentioned before, that gives a good understanding of how the game will wind up being played, and it's some time before we actually get our hands on that game. So let's go ahead and transition over to Ground Zeroes.